Yeah.
The longer you can fall, the more time you have to get your shin down, the more momentum you're building in the process, the more time, as we throw into our upper bodies, the more time you have to delay this. The longer you fall, the more chance you have to prepare and sequence the kinetic change.
Welcome to The Grind.
Hey, we got Carson Ness here. We have an evaluation with him today, and you're going to see him pitch. We'll take him into some of his training. He's new to TopVelocity, so tell him about yourself, how old you are, where you're coming from.
20 years old, came from Forks, Washington, Forks High School.
And you were playing JUCO, you said?
Yeah, I was playing at Edmonds Community College up in Washington.
And running into a lot of COVID stuff, so you wanted to take some time off and train?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So, what were your goals coming here?
I want to throw 96. That's where I want to leave here with.
Great. Well, I've already seen he's a hard worker. He's been here a couple of days. What are you hoping to get out of the TopVelocity method? What are you hoping to discover or help, learn or understand about yourself?
I want to be able to come out of here playing at a high level, but also be at a point where I can go and coach other people out of the facility.
Cool. So you want to learn the biomechanical stuff. You want to learn the training environment, the training plans, the programming,
everything.
Cool. All right, so check him out for the rest of the day, and we'll see how he does. Break it down. We're going to go to mobility first. So trunk rotation, it's just a little tight, better on your arm side than your non-throwing side, but a little tight. So what that means is if my trunk rotation is a little tight, meaning I can't get a full 90 range, then I'm going to have a hard time delaying or keeping my shoulders back as my hips open, and that'll affect hip to shoulder separation. Your hip abduction, tight. So I'm just seeing with you a lot of hip problems. So hip abduction, that means your hips, your thighs aren't gonna, if you're doing a side split, they're not gonna go out far enough. So what happens is it limits how long you can travel sideways. And when you can't travel sideways long enough, you have to go into rotation too early. And that's a problem because when the back leg, if we wanna apply force from the ground, this back leg has to get into a linear position to push through. If it doesn't get in a linear position, then it's more like a golfer or hitter. We're just gonna spin, right? So the hip abduction is gonna limit how long you can ride sideways, which will force you into rotation early. And when we go in rotation early, we try to power through rotation, and then everything over rotates. Your dorsiflexion wasn't too bad. Your hip internal, external wasn't too bad. 45, 40, 45. So it's slightly a little tight. Hip flexion really bad, so 60. That's gonna affect how your trunk can go forward. So you're gonna have a hard time hitting your front leg and pushing your trunk out, which is gonna affect command. So that means you're gonna hit front foot and you're gonna be limited on how well you can carry your trunk to the target. So that's gonna affect how well you can command your pitch. Because when I can carry longer, more trunk energy to the target, not only will it give me more velocity, but it's gonna give me more inertial energy behind my release point, which has a high correlation to your ability to locate and command.
I usually miss up.
Right,
I've
because
always been
well,
able to
makes a
mess
good point.
up, yeah.
If you can't carry your trunk far, it's going to be finishing more up. If you can carry your trunk far, you start finishing down.
Okay.
Right? But the correction is the leg. So think about it. If someone sees you missing up, they're going to tell you to get your arm in front of your face, or they're going to make the correction in your arm, and that's not how you want to do it. You want to make the correction through your trunk. But your trunk can't go forward if your leg can't support it.
Yeah.
So now we have to get our legs to be more flexible in flexion, so we can
tight
carry
hammies.
Yeah, it's killing you, right?
Okay.
So we've got some great things. Like I need to show you the dorsiflexion ramps. You need to do all your deadlifts in full dorsiflexion.
Okay.
And that will help release it.
Yeah.
Let's see, your arm is fine. It's just a little limited in external rotation, but it's not a big deal. It's probably you have healthier shoulders because of it. Horizontal abduction is a little tight. I mean, pinching your blades. That you know, it's gonna be, you'll have healthy upper body, but it makes it harder for you to delay your arm, which means you're gonna have to separate even better. Actually, I'm wrong. Your horizontal abduction, I was looking at hip extension. Your horizontal abduction is better than I thought. Your hip extension is a little tight. Not as bad as your hip flexion. So that's when you put the leg behind your back and you lift it up.
Okay.
So
Quads.
it's not too bad. It's just your hip flexion is really the problem. But when your hip extension's tight, you have a hard time pushing the hip forward and back. So this movement is how we drive the hips and how we finish the trunk. So those are important movements. That's going to affect what's pushing your trunk forward. So that's why your trunk, you miss high, because your trunk doesn't go forward well. But the point is, we can't fix the trunk until we fix these things.
Fix the legs.
So as far as like everything else, like your grip strength was above average, which is good. Your rotational speed, thousands elite, it's close, a little below average for elite. Your vertical jump's a little below average for elite. You're 200 pounds. Yeah, I think everything's below the elite ranges. So we definitely have a lot of work we can do in the explosiveness and even strength. It wasn't too bad, but we still a lot more strength we can develop. Your Y balance, really poor. These all need to be 40. So this really shows the tight hip issues you have is preventing you to have a good Y balance. So Y balance has a direct correlation to your ability to use the kinetic chain.
Okay.
So biomechanically, we're gonna see challenges because of your hip tightness not allowing you to coordinate the kinetic chain.
So it's more my lower hip range instead of anything upper.
Exactly. You don't have enough.
Because it starts from upper.
You're right.
Or lower.
It was just like when you're doing your broad jumps. You kept falling and you're having a hard time catching yourself. You don't have enough mobility to have good proprioception. Proprioception is your joint's ability to move and shift and balance and coordinate in all directions. So if you land and you're having a hard time doing that, your body's just freaking out, it's probably because it doesn't have enough range to work with. It's like taking a ball and controlling the ball in a big bowl, okay? If I had a big bowl with a ball in it, I could easily move it around the bowl, right? And I could change direction, I could guide it. But if I had it in a little bowl, it'd be like, I couldn't do it,
trying
right?
to bounce off the walls and stuff.
So that's what's happening with you. You're so tight that when you land, you go to balance and control, you don't have enough room, and it feels all herky-jerky.
It's a very small range of motion
Right.
right there to
So
land.
Right, so you need more room to have more control, and that's the joint ranges, right?
Okay.
So let's take this and see how biomechanically how this is affecting you, right? So coming out of leg lift, we first talked about how you don't have a lot of room to move laterally. Remember, your hip abduction was tight. So I said, you're not gonna move this way well, right? You're gonna wanna go into rotation. And you can see out of leg lift, right here, you're already rotating. An elite guy, he's gonna get this line or this shin way out here. So he's gonna continue his hips.
Oh, so he's gonna be way out
he's
here.
gonna keep going. But you stopped.
rotates.
So you stopped right here. You're already rotating
Pretty
inward.
vertical.
Right. So you're in a more hitter's drive leg position than a pitcher's drive leg. An elite pitcher's drive leg position would be way down here. A hitter's drive leg position would be like right here.
I've
Because
done
hitters,
I've done a lot of hitting stuff. I've been a hitter
Right.
for a long time. So.
right. So the point is if you don't have that kind of mobility, it'd be easier for you to hit than pitch at high
Yeah,
velocities.
Yeah.
Same time too, it's gonna be hard to get a lot of energy out of your body because the angles are off. It's kind of like saying, it's like I'm trying to like launch a car off a ramp, and I can get the car going really fast, but the problem is the ramp isn't a good launch. It's a flat ramp.
So you go higher than you will
Right.
long ways.
So the point is like, yeah, I might have great energy coming down the hill to the ramp, but the ramp is so, off in angles and direction that it doesn't matter how much energy I have, it's not going to be directed where I want the energy to go. So it's like you could have all this power and strength and mobility, or not mobility, power, strength, and speed in your body, but you don't have the mobility to direct it, so therefore you can't even use it.
Yep.
Right? So you can see because of that, you just turn over and land. So you're hitting.
Shoulders are also up.
Your what?
The shoulders are pretty up.
Well, they should be up. Like, what do you mean pretty up? Like tilted
But they
back?
stay up. They don't come down because I'm not.
No, look, at the end of the day, your shoulders are just reacting to the energy your lower half is creating.
Okay.
It's like a whip. If I grab the handle, where does the end go? The end goes where I throw the handle. So I don't worry about the end until I've done the correct and effective movements, or created the effective movements of the handle. So all I'm telling you is don't go up until you feel like you've got the lower half set.
Okay.
Then we can go up and figure out what's going on. But right now we saw failure to propel the energy forward.
I'm also like collapsing my front leg completely.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, it's not actually not collapsing. It's still rotating, but it's stabilizing. The problem is the energy into landing is poor. So you hit front foot right here, and there's not a lot of power. Your foot is even still in the ground. An elite guy, he'd have his hips, say, 50, 60 degrees open, and he'd have a lot more force moving through them. And then we can go to the kinematic sequence. And what this does is this tells us how things are accelerating in rotation. This is an angular measurement of speed. So in this graph, this is time, and this is speed, or degrees per second, how fast something's doing this, okay? So we can see over time, which the white line is showing us time, right? We hit right here, and that red line just on the just like the avatar is your hip speeds. Well, if something in this graph of time to degrees per second is moving quickly, it goes up and down. So a faster moving segment would spike up and down. A slower moving segment would make a slow little hump, right? So first thing we see with the hip speeds is not only do we see a little hump, but we see it chopped off. That means you started peaking your speeds to here, and then you ran out of speed, and it flattened out. Why did it flatten out? Because you hit front foot, and you didn't create enough energy into front foot. So once your front foot put a brake in, it shut off. But what we need to do a better job of is propelling energy to that point. So when the foot brakes with the hip still rotating, it acts as an accelerator, not a decelerator. So it's when your front foot lands, it's now slowing your hips down. If we had more propulsion and we landed, it would help finish it off, and that's where you'd get a full spike. Right. So at the end of the day, that's a failure of putting energy into landing. That's a failure of driving power through the back hip, right? And then, your front leg stabilizes, and then it starts to run off. So that's going to be a problem, because at the end of the day, to get high velocity to the ball, we can't lose velocity in the process to it, right? We have to see peak, peak, peak. That's what the kinematic sequence is. It's a catapult effect. It's peak, and then the next peak is building off the previous one to another level, then the next peak's going to another level. So we can't be...
So it's drive, hips, and then
it's
release.
hips,
So
trunk, arm. Okay. And it's a trebuchet effect, or it's a catapult on a catapult system, and they're exponentially growing. Okay. So when you run out of energy up front, then the rest of the way you're trying to overcompensate. That's when your arm starts pulling and all the things start happening, right? Okay. So you can see too, your trunk peaks right here. So your hip should have peaked there, but also your trunk would have peaked there. So you're two in sync. You got everything moving together, right? So everything's moving together. Elite guys pull everything apart, just like the catapult.
In 3 sections.
Right.
Okay.
So elite guys, if everything starts together, it goes hips first, trunk second, arm third. An elite guy has bigger separation of those segments. Amateur guys bring it all together, right? Elite guys, it's like boom, boom,
That's probably
boom.
maybe that's how I was taught or something. I was just kind of
well,
all in one motion, you know?
I don't think so. I think it's just a failure to achieve what you've been taught, probably. Or you probably weren't taught well enough to really understand it, definitely. But the point is we saw the failure from the beginning. The moment this leg stopped moving linear and you had to turn it over, you started with poor power.
So it just kind of sunk and lost
it
power.
just turned over, and now you got to try to make up for it up here.
Okay, yeah.
So the moment this stopped moving forward and just laid down is when you were never going to accomplish 96, right? So it really, at the end of the day, it's going to come downstream to the original movement, or wherever the breakdown was, which we see right there in the hips. So these are in sync. So you need to pull these apart. You need to, if this is the hip peak, obviously we need to turn it into a hip peak. Then we need to bring the trunk peak later, and then the arm peak last. So that means when your hips are peaking right here, your trunk still needs to be back. Well, how do you do stuff like that? Well, if you would have gotten more linear and applied more forces through your hip, that force would have better pushed away from your shoulder.
It would have caused this separation.
Yeah, it would have created leverage to pull these apart. But when you don't have that and this is collapsing, these just want to go together. So the point is, it still goes through the initial problem of you getting linear and getting force through the back leg. And also too, we knew you had a little tight trunk, so that can work against it too. So as we go to release, you can see pretty much once the hips open, the trunk is open with it. Now from here, all you can do, if these are coming together, all you can do is continue to accelerate in rotation to finish. If these are apart, then this trunk has all this leading momentum to carry itself forward. And then what happens is...
Instead of me trying to make up for it.
Right. What happens is if you separate well and you have a good exponential growth of energy, this has time to load and has more... Yeah, it has time to load, therefore it gives it more time to turn over. And the earlier we turn this over, the earlier we go from resisting supination to firing pronation, the earlier we do that, the better our ball spins.
Okay.
The later we do that, the worse our ball spins. So when you see, because everything went together, your arm had to push ahead to help out.
Pushing the ball instead of
Pushing the
whipping
ball is delaying this.
Okay.
So when this doesn't get to separate and turn over early, and it all comes together and you push, now you delay pronation, therefore you're going to hurt all your ball speeds. So all your spins are going to be poor. So you have a good release point. Like the one thing you're doing well is you're staying contralateral, meaning your trunk's staying on this side. You're not falling inward. So that's a positive. So that gives you a good 1 o'clock access.
Is that where you want it?
So these are vertical accesses. The only thing is you're not getting good break. So you're not getting good like impulse into a plane. So there's no explosion into a plane of movement. Right. So you have a 15-inch break. A lead is like 19 to 20.
Okay.
So like I said, if you're pushing the ball, but also velocity is going to change that. So if you're pushing the ball and your velocity's down, you're not going to have good break in your ball. Your ball's going to be flat. So for example, you have an 89 spin efficiency, which is, starting to be below average. Plus you have a very poor spin, total spin. So if we can pronate early, better separating, if we can get this earlier in the movement, we're going to get more spin out of the ball along with the velocity. So that's the coolest thing. If you sync up the kinetic chain better, sequence it better, and you put more energy through it, your velocity goes up, you pronate early, and all your spin starts to go up. Okay?
And that's all with the hips right now.
Right. So the point is where'd you fail? You failed right in the beginning. You failed to leverage the ground to push peak energy and push a lead energy up to where you could delay and transfer that energy, sync up your upper body better to get more velocity and better spin.